Episode of Cannabis Health Radio. I'm Ian Jessup, and Corey Elland is away today. About 6 months ago, I interviewed a woman from Seattle, Washington, who was trying cannabis for her multiple sclerosis to see if it would help with her symptoms. And joining us for an update on how she's doing is Meg Llewellyn. Meg, good to talk to you again.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me back.
The last time we talked, you were a newbie to using cannabis, and I read your latest blog, and you're now referring to various strains. You've come a long way, haven't you?
I have. I still have a lot to learn, and I would definitely still categorize myself as a newbie, but I have learned so much, and I'm absolutely amazed and impressed with how much information is out there.
Yeah, there's a lot. Now, just to recap for listeners, tell us when you first discovered you had MS.
I was diagnosed in 2007, and as I went through with you on my first interview, went through the first 4 years of physically being impacted significantly and led to using a cane in my Segway most of the time. About 6 years ago, I went through a life change of getting a divorce, and reduction in stress really did help with my physical impairment, and put away the cane and the Segway, and have not used either of those in now almost 6 years. Somewhere in those 6 years, my chronic pain began, and honestly, now that I am finding relief, I am able to look back and understand that over the last probably 2 years, I was just living in a bubble of pain and, just solely existing to get through to the next day and manage in any way that I could the pain. And now, as I said, that I'm finding relief, it's not always, and it's not always consistent, but I am having so much more clarity and able to just really feel as if I'm participating in life again.
Now, Meg, prior to taking cannabis, on a pain scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the absolute worst, where would you say your MS was?
By the time I went to the cannabis, 10. And I always say, I don't say 10. Whenever I went to the doctor, I would, leave it at 9, because 10 meant it couldn't get any worse. But I definitely, and I do, because it doesn't always work, or I don't have the right strain, I have days where I am close to back there, and I absolutely wonder how the hell I managed to survive it day in and day out without anything.
Now, on a good day after using cannabis, where would you be on that pain scale?
Probably a 3 to 4.
That's amazing.
Yeah. When it's working, it works well. I've written, I am always still aware that the pain, is there, but I'm feeling so many things outside of that pain. And I say, for right now, I have to say I'm using cannabis for my chronic pain and not necessarily for my MS symptoms, because since I've found relief from the pain, I have been inundated with feeling the old MS feelings, like the heavy foot and the MS hug, which I haven't felt, but that's because I couldn't feel anything through the pain. I may well in another month or two come back and be bitching and complaining about the MS, symptoms that I feel. And I am hoping to begin to find strains that maybe address some of those things. But for right now, I'm just happy to feeling something other than pain. So the pain was so bad before that your MS symptoms you hardly felt because you were dealing with this pain, which is in the forefront. Yep. I don't think at all that the pains didn't exist that the symptoms didn't exist. I just could not discern them from, outside the pain. Now, in your blog, you refer to the MS hug. What do you mean by that? It is a tightening around your midsection, and I don't really understand what causes it. It can be as light as just a tight shirt, and it can get to really feeling like you're in a vice and it's just squeezing. The first time I experienced it, I thought I was having a panic attack, but it's an odd thing. We, and I don't know whether you heard it, Meg, but we interviewed a fellow in Nova Scotia who is patenting a various product with the U.S. government, and he has MS, or he had MS. Yes, I listened to that. Oh, you heard that one, did you? About I did. Taking omega-3 and hemp seed oil? Omega-3, yep. Have you tried that? And vitamin D, I haven't. Again, I really am a newbie in that other than a few products like honey infused with THC and CBD and mints, I've stuck to my vape pen and the strains that are available through that concentrate. Eventually I keep saying I want to, find and try other things. I tried just doing RSO or CBD products to begin with, and there was, a slight improvement in the pain, but nothing that really, in my mind, made it worth continuing that. And so that's what led me to looking at strains that are higher in THC. And that's where I began to find the relief.
Yeah, we did an interview with Martin Lee of Project CBD, and he said even if you take CBD, you need to take some THC in it because they work synergistically.
Yep. And I for my body, that definitely has proven to be the point. And what I have found, I've learned about, the two plants, and I am much more an indica person. I do not do well with sativas, and, that could pose a problem because one of the big thing with MS is fatigue, and the fact that an indica tends to be more the couch potato, mellow. I don't know if possibly using the strains that I'm using may be making me feel a bit more fatigued, but I have so much more energy than I did with the pain that it still seems like a win.
There must be some specific strains that are good for MS.
Yeah,
and your dog.
I know, sorry.
Well, that's okay.
Dad got home, and it's really exciting.
Okay.
And he's trying to keep them away. Yes, I have, I started out the very first really, I am finding significant relief was a strain Super Skunk. And I used that consistently for probably a month. And one of the things that I'm learning is it's not always great to find a great strain because you might not be able to find it again. And that's what happened. And eventually I had to go to something else, and I was very hesitant and, pessimistic that anything else was going to work. But I have found other strains that definitely work. And, I one of the things I really, really enjoy is just feeling like I have control in the management of the pain. Mm-hmm. If when I was on the on the methadone, if as, my body got used to it and, my doctor was encouraging me to increase the dose and I didn't want to, I would take the pill and it wouldn't really touch the pain. And there was no way that I would ever consider just taking another pill. Whereas if I take a few puffs in the morning and whether it's stress or heat, the pain begins to creep back in, I have no doubt that I can grab, either the strain that I tried that morning or maybe another one, and that, I will begin to feel relief again. And I really like that control.
Are you on any pharmaceuticals at the moment?
I am not. I went from, I think it was 16 pills a day. And, this didn't start out as, I want to rid my body of all pharmaceuticals. It was just really, I wanted to get rid of the pain. But I think I mentioned to you, I didn't want to start trying the marijuana or cannabis until I had gotten off of all of the, pain medications. Mm-hmm. And so I weaned my body off of that, 6 months prior, but I was still on a couple of other MS medicines. And really unintentionally, I slowly began to taper off of those. So I have not been on anything for about 6 months other than the cannabis.
When you weaned off those prior to starting the cannabis, how difficult was that for you?
It really wasn't. At that point, the ones I was on, I mentioned I was given medicine that's usually for depression that I put on 20 pounds in 8 weeks. And so the idea of getting off of that and trying to just get my body back functioning, I didn't go through any withdrawals with that or anything. I wanted it out of my body. And it showed me, there wasn't, once I was off of it and medicine free, there was not a huge difference in the pain level, which says to me it wasn't doing anything but making me fat.
It was called amitriptyline, was that it?
That was the one. So, and I started with that. That was the one. That's the bad one. And then when I went in nice and puffy and fat and complained to my doctor, he said, oh, well, there's another one in this family that doesn't make you gain weight as much, so let's move you over to that. And that was nortriptyline. And maybe it's because I was already fat from the first one, but that made no difference. And as I said, once I came off of it, it was not touching the pain.
Did you lose the weight?
I'm down 15 pounds.
Fantastic. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, that's, people say, oh, you get the munchies from cannabis. For me, I think one of the things I'm enjoying, I mean, I'm not sitting here, using it to get high. And I used to say, I don't want it to mess with my mind. And then, I figured out one night, it's like my mind is the one that thinks it's in pain. So go ahead and mess with it, as long as, I can function. And I really feel like I have a better sense of my body now. I think about what I'm eating just because when the pain was there, which is back to what I normally was, but when the pain was there, I mean, it literally was just get through the day. And I get up in the morning and, because I can take a puff and the pain is less, the first thing I want to do is do stretches, and I'm returning to the gym, and it's been kind of life altering, but it's been enjoyable.
Yeah, I know when we first did the interview in early February of this year, you were slightly optimistic about taking cannabis, but there was some hesitancy, I could tell, as to whether it would help you. And those of us who don't deal with the pain that you dealt with every day really have no idea how difficult that is and how that really messes with your mind, doesn't it?
Well, and to be honest with you, I mean, I told you and everybody else during that time period that I had pain. But until you are out of that pain, outside of, I can't describe it as anything but a bubble, you cannot even begin to conceive of how bad it is every day, because you just can't. I mean, there's just not enough space in your brain because you're just dealing with the pain. I mean, it overrides everything else.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes if I don't go to the chiropractor, my back goes out, and my wife always says to me, "Is your back out?" I says, "Yeah, it is a bit." And she could tell because it changes your attitude. It changes everything about you, because that is the total focus of your mind. It's the bloody constant pain.
Yeah, even if you think you are being amicable and and kind and nice, you are a different person because that pain has taken over.
Are you a different person today than when we talked in early February?
Absolutely. I mean, am I different? No, I'm me. I'm the one I was before.
But you're different psychologically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in a much better, and I didn't know how bad of a spot I was in. I really didn't. And I remember when I talk about boobs, boots, and hair, and I want to, look good. And I used to go into the doctor's office always well made up and tell him I'm in, excruciating pain. And it was really hard to convince anybody of that. And I remember him saying something that was, kind of a forewarning. And he said, well, you really need to be on the disease modifying drugs, because I've seen so many people, like you, who come in and, you're all put together and, in 10 years' time, you're a shell of the person you were. And I was so angry at him for saying that back then, because I was sassy and active and everything was great. And as the pain got worse and I became the couch potato that everybody thinks marijuana is going to make me, I was deep into depression. I would do the things that I needed to do to take care of my children and, the activities that I was required to do with my boyfriend and family. But there was really no enjoyment. And yet here I was, I'd gotten a divorce and I have this great man who's my best friend, and my kids are older and I'm having fun with them. And so, externally, I just kept saying, I'm happy, because I knew that where my life was at, I damn well should be happy. But you can't be, because you just can't feel it.
Meg, is there a period in the year where your symptoms, your MS symptoms, are worse than others?
Well, I think for a lot of people with MS, heat exacerbates symptoms. And so summer is always a challenge. In the past, when my kids were younger, I spend a significant amount of time on the beach and I just jump in the water. That's how I cool my body off. And that really provides instant relief. And I have been using the cannabis and getting out and doing a lot of activities. And we've had, fairly decent weather, not too high temperatures. But it has helped with that as well, just kind of staving off the beginning to get blurry vision and my mind feeling like it's fogged up, which is what happens when I get overheated.
The heat is very interesting, isn't it? Because I can't imagine someone who lives in a much warmer climate, even though MS, as you get closer to the equator, the MS starts to disappear, and the farther away you are from the equator, the MS
Right.
increases. So those of us in the Pacific Northwest, and in Canada has the highest MS rate in the world, followed by some of the Scandinavian countries. But I would have thought that maybe over the winter, when you weren't getting enough vitamin D, that your symptoms would worsen.
Yep. No, and it isn't, I vitamin D, and I grew up on the East Coast. So laterally, it's about the same longitudinal, latitudinal, whatever. But I was I was a lifeguard every single summer. And yes, we have harsh winters, but there was still sunshine, and I skied and used to get, sunburns on my face in the middle of the winter. And whenever I've gone and had my vitamin D levels tested, I actually have been on the high side. And I don't, at that point, I wasn't taking supplements. But, the reality is it has to do with the heat. It's not the sun. It's, I can walk into a gym that has no windows, and the minute I start to overheat, and for me, what the heat does is, as I said, my vision just goes to shit. I can't see. And my mind gets fuzzy. I mean, it's truly like I'm drunk, and it's instant. And so, you go into a gym and, you start working out and you begin to feel that way. It's a really weird thing to be feeling while you're trying to exercise or do something.
So even exercise, as you exercise and your body heats up, you get those symptoms?
Oh yeah. And I just wrote about, I tried a cooling vest. I mean, there are things that can keep my temperature down a little bit. But it's instant. And I mean, as I said, I don't want cannabis to mess with my mind, but MS does it all the time. Mm-hmm. We head out in the morning, to take the dog for a walk, and, it's 10 o'clock in the morning and the sun rises, and, we've walked for a half hour. I might as well have taken, 3 or 4 shots of whiskey. It's just that foggy. It's just, you can't quite get through. And then, as I said, I literally can jump in a lake and cool off and be fine. After I work out at the gym, I go and sit in my air-conditioned car for about 10 minutes for my vision to return so that I can drive home.
So you sit in the car for 10 minutes, you cool off, and your eyesight returns. Do I have that right?
Yep.
Does that happen in the winter? In the winter as well, when you work out and you get warm and you go outside, you still have to sit in an air-conditioned car?
And if it's cold, again, Seattle, we don't get really cold.
No.
When coming out from the gym, it's 45 and wet, but not really cold. And so getting in and just cranking the air conditioning for 10 minutes is, and the interesting thing, you would think cooling my face off would work. And I have found that cooling my feet off, so putting it, all of the cold air to the floor, makes my vision come back faster than anything else.
This is much more complicated than I would ever imagined. You know that? It really is.
It's really difficult to live, too. I mean, it's just kind of weird. And, I mentioned last time I talked to you, I am obtuse. I just do things. And so all these things that I've done to adapt to the symptoms, I don't think about much anymore. It's just, that's how I do it. But it is weird. It is really, really strange. Again, I'm outside watering the plants and a neighbor comes over, and as the sun warms up, I literally am just, she's going fuzzy because my sight is going, and my mind, I mean, it's like I just did a couple shots while she was talking to me. And yet nobody knows that this is going on.
No, absolutely not. Meg, I'm wondering, when you were at your worst, when your pain was at a 10 on the scale of 1 to 10, I'm wondering what it was like for you psychologically in terms of you thinking about your future.
Again, I've talked about it on the blog. I'm a very optimistic person, and I am incredibly thankful for the partner in life that I have found and where my life is going. And I would blog and write and hope that I will publish my book someday. But everything, again, was just outside of this bubble. I didn't feel as if I had much control in what was going to happen. If I woke up in the morning and one of my blog posts, had been viewed 5,000 times, that was good. But I didn't have any control over that. It was just something that I did to occupy my time. And now, I've written, I am now thinking that I want to try to go back to work. And, I left work only because the company I was working for laid everybody in the U.S. off. And so, I would still be working for that company, and I would have done that through the pain because I was there when the pain was beginning to get really bad. But, in the last 2 years, there's no way, because I just didn't know how bad each day was going to be. I mean, can I really, get up and function in society? And I'm now dusting off my resume and applying for jobs.
You were existing as opposed to living.
Yep, absolutely. And I've said that in the blog. I mean, it really, I just existed. And as I said, I knew that, looking from the outside, my life looked good. I had everything that I want. And I went through the motions of having dinner with my children and laughing and going camping with my boyfriend. But again, all of it was just do it to get through the day.
Meg, I'm wondering, since you said you vape and you have tried cannabis oil in the past, I'm wondering if you microdosed on the cannabis oil, whether that would be beneficial for you throughout the day.
And that's one of the things that I have, on my list of things to try. Every time I try a different strain, come home with something different, I want to try it for consistently a week to find out, because there are so many variations day to day with how I feel with the MS, that I could try a strain today and be like, oh my God, Ian, this is the best thing in the entire world. This is the best my pain level has been since I started. And tomorrow I could use it and it doesn't touch it because, I didn't sleep well or it's hot out. I mean, it's just everything I try to try for a couple of weeks just to get a feel for overall how it helped. So microdosing is definitely, dabbing is another thing that I'm hoping to learn more about. There are just so many things.
Oh yeah, it's a real learning experience.
It is, and I'm very aware of that. I am using it for medical purposes, and I understand that those of us who are using it for a medical purpose, it's different for anybody that is using it recreationally. And so those two, and Instagram, I don't really need to the 20-year-old teens in their bikinis that are, touting the joint that they're smoking. Those aren't the people that I need to associate with. And yet I've learned so much and I've read so much about legalization. And from what I 100% believe, I can't see a difference between choosing marijuana recreational to going out and having beers with your friend. And so I don't want to ignore that side of it, because I fully support that part of it. And so it's kind of, a balance between I don't need to be woohoo, I'm getting high, because that's not what I'm doing. And yet I do enjoy hearing about, functioning people who are yeah, I went out and had a great sesh and, we came up with some creative ideas for this new program or whatever. I think that's awesome that that's how people are using it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering about the microdosing, because I take a capsule of 3.5 milligrams of CBD and 3 milligrams of THC.
Okay.
And I take that a couple of times a day, and for me, it works wonders. I don't take it for any specific medical purpose, but I think, in looking back at it and on my life and what it's done for me, I think I suffered a bit from anxiety. And that just kind of levels it out. And
yeah.
I think, if you took something like that, maybe 3 or 4 times a day, depending on how you feel, because this is always an experiment. It's always a dance. You have to find out what works for you. What works for you may not work for me. So
absolutely.
I think if you did the microdosing with cannabis oil, you might see a difference.
That is definitely something that's on my list.
So anything you'd like to say in conclusion, Meg?
Well, I'm not really sure. As I said, I'm still learning. And I think we quoted it that I was optimistic or pessimistically optimistic. I don't know what I was. But I am extremely excited that I have found cannabis, and even more excited about the fact that there are just so many possibilities out there. I had said that one of my greatest issues to begin with was just the fear if it didn't work, what else is there? Because I don't want to go back to being in that bubble. I don't want, to live with the pain. And, what I love about what I've learned about the cannabis community and the industry is there are so many things out there and people are learning more every day. Just as I said, I'm thinking about going back, to work. And the first place I applied for a job is my pot shop. So I'm hoping that someday I can be a bud tender and share what I've learned and learn from others.
I mean, look at the transition that's happened to you.
I know.
Only in the last 6 months.
Yep.
I mean, it's amazing because when we first talked that you weren't this optimistic, and now you're looking for a job.
At a pot shop.
At a pot shop, that's right. Yeah.
I'm not sure, calling my parents, I'm like, hey, I'm going to look for a job. And they said, where? And I was like, the pot shop. And they were like, oh. And my dad's comment was, I'm pretty sure you didn't need a college degree to sell pot. And I was like, yeah, but I'm going to be doing it legally.
Well, the other good thing, Meg, is the fact that you're off the what they call them, disease-modifying drugs.
Yeah, and I'm not willing to say, yes, that's a great thing, only because I'm not opposed to exploring that in the future. For right now, my body is stable. MRIs, are showing that there hasn't been progression, and I'm feeling better. I haven't had an exacerbation in 4 years, and the way I explained it to my doctor was, I don't want to put anything in my body as far as medicine that might remind my body, like that it has this disease and should be progressing. Yeah, I said, I don't want to wake the monster. And so for right now, because everything is stable and, we're monitoring it, but I don't want to say that I would never explore that just because I don't know what the future holds.
Well, the good news is that you're stable. It's not getting worse.
Exactly. And that's been the case even with the pain. And I know that people will say, even if an MRI doesn't show active or new lesions, your body is progressing. And I'm aware of all of that. But for right now, as I said, I'm just so ecstatic that I kind of feel like I have my life back. And I now have something to be passionate about. I've written about the MS forever. But I didn't choose to get MS. I didn't choose like, oh, yes, I want that disease. And so writing about it was, I don't know if it's an obligation or just feeling like I want to share my story, but I can't get passionate about it. With cannabis, it's something that I chose and it's working. And so, absolutely, I have full passion for it.
Well, it's hard to get passionate about a disease that causes you tremendous pain, isn't it?
Well, as I said, and even I realize, like, I don't do much with the MS Society or fundraisers and whatnot. I don't do, much. I certainly communicate with other people with MS and other chronic illnesses through the blog and social media. I've always kind of hesitated because I didn't want that to become my life. Like, just because I have MS doesn't mean that that's all I can do, is go out and peddle people to fundraise and whatnot. Like, that's great, and there are people need to do it, and there's value to that. But I want to do something else.
MS
MS
isn't who you are.
Yeah, no, and everybody says like I may have MS, but MS doesn't have me, and I say I'm pretty sure this bitch owns me because like MS gets to decide whether or not today is going to be a good day. But what I have control over is what I'm going to do today. And, if I sit and write about the MS every day, all day, it's what I'm thinking about. It's what I'm doing, and it becomes me. And so I really am happy that I have something that's outside of it that I can say, hey, legit, like this is helping me. And I really enjoy that. Meg, it doesn't make me think about the MS all the time.
Yeah. Meg, it's good to talk to you again. Good to see that you're making progress and you're going to be a bud tender. And you'll
hopefully
you'll have to send us a message when you get that job.
I will let everybody know, believe me.
Okay. Thanks for this.
Thanks so much, Ian.
Okay, bye.
Take care. Bye.
If you'd like to tell your story about the medical use of cannabis, then send us an email at info@cannabishealthradio.com. Thanks for listening, everyone.
You've been listening to the Cannabis Health Radio podcast. Visit our website, cannabishealthradio.com, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.